All right, so let's start. My name's Casey Wu. I'm a senior producer at 343 Industries.
And I'm David Hiscock. I'm a principal software engineer at SkyBox Labs.
And we're here to talk about how our approach to code development shaped our relationship into what it is today. So let's get to know each other. A little blurb about me. I entered into the video game industry in 2008 at Vicarious Visions, which is an Activision Blizzard company. And then I went to Blizzard Entertainment in 2012. And then in 2014, I went to 343 Industries, and I've been there since. So a little bit about 343 Industries. We were founded in 2007 by Xbox Game Studios to continue on the Halo saga after Bungie. Our first Halo FPS was Halo 4, released on Xbox 360 in 2012. We're located in Redmond, Washington, which is just a hop, skip, and jump away from Seattle. Now, David.
So I've been making video games professionally now for about 17 years, and I still find this industry is teaching me things every single day. I got my start as a programmer at Electronic Arts way back in 2002, and like most people at Electronic Arts, I shipped a lot of titles in that time. Back in 2011, some people I knew were starting a fledgling startup called SkyBox Labs, so I took a bit of a leap of faith and joined them. I've been there ever since. I currently work as the engineering lead for all of the work that SkyBox does on Halo Infinite. Now a little bit about SkyBox Labs. Again, 2011, about when we started. 8 years ago, we were a small, scrappy startup of 8 people. We've slowly grown over the time now to the point where we're 180 members on staff. We have always had a very strong history of co-development work. And while we've worked with many partners over the years, I would say by far we've always had an ongoing partnership with Microsoft. While a small part of the SkyBox business model enables internal IP development, our business is driven by our partnership work and remains the focus of all of our growth.
All right, so we got quite a bit to cover. First, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a quick overview of our history to give you all some context. And then we're going to dive right into things and talk about how our approach to co-development and our adherence to 3 key principles led us to having a successful partnership. And then we'll go over to our 5-year history, which is conveniently cut into 3 chunks of time. And then, since we are covering quite a bit of information, don't worry, we're going to summarize it all in the wrap-up and hopefully have some time for questions. Okay, so let's go back in time.
All right, so it's not just Halo that SkyBox has partnered with Microsoft on. We've worked with Xbox Game Studios on Age of Empires, Rise of Nations, Project Spark, and we currently have a large co-development team working on Minecraft as well.
So, why did we partner with you all in the first place? So we knew we would need a lot of engineering help. Halo 4 was on Xbox 360. Halo 5 would be on Xbox One. And also, with any new Halo title, we're always looking to make the most epic experience ever. So, more ambition means more scope. And as David said earlier, SkyBox has an excellent track record and continues to. And this industry is so small, too, that your reputation means everything. And the founders have an excellent reputation, so no-brainer. And there's one thing, too. We are 136 miles apart, and that is a really huge advantage. So that means that, you know, if the wait time at the border isn't too bad, and you drive sensibly, you can get from door to door in less than 3 hours. But if you have a Nexus pass and you don't drive sensibly, it's closer to 2. I don't recommend doing that. But seriously, being in the same time zone is a massive advantage. It means that it's easy to call into meetings and easy to visit each other, and it gives us a lot of flexibility in our team structure. So let's jump into the structure now. Okay, so Halo Infinite team is cut up into 9 holistic teams. And of those 9 holistic teams, we're cut up into about 40 teams, strike teams. And I say about 40 because We set them up as they're needed, and then we tear them down as they hit their objectives. Now, before we talk about how SkyBox fits into this, I'm going to turn it over to David to talk about our philosophy to code development, because it has a lot to do with why they are integrated as such.
So we try to envision ourselves as one team that is spread across 2 different companies and 2 different studios. Now, I think it's important to stress that this is a point on the horizon that we are always steering towards. We are never going to get 100% of the way there, but it informs a lot of the decisions about how we structure our teams. I think the best way to kind of jump into this now is just with an example of our combat team. So for our combat team, we start with a producer on the SkyBox side and a producer on the 343 side that partner together. In the case of the combat team, we have 5 designers that are all working together. One of them works at SkyBox. Now, our engineering team is roughly a 50-50 split between the 2 studios. Now, this team does stand-ups together over a video conference. They share the same task backlog. They review the nightly build together. It's not all of the work that we do is as tightly integrated as this team, but this is the norm for all of the teams that we have. Now I know this kind of one team concept sounds simple, but it's like a mindset shift that we then kind of try to build on with our actual physical team structure. Back to Casey.
All right, so back to where we were. We have about 40 strike teams, and those 40 strike teams, 18 of them have SkyBox Labs employee integration into them. And of those 18 teams, 3 are completely driven by SkyBox, which is pretty cool, because what this implies is that we don't stick to a strict template in terms of how we structure each of these teams. We want to have that flexibility so that way we can let those unique individuals shine with their unique skills. So, all right. In this next section, we're going to go over the keys to our success. We'll talk about our philosophy and how we reinforce it by focusing on people, process, and culture. Each one builds off of the other. And this isn't to say that you don't need a predictable schedule or sufficient hard skills or a vision. In order for us to successfully execute on all those tactical bits, we need to invest in all of these key areas. So in this next section, we'll revisit how each of these key items played a role in building our partnership into what it is today. So, David.
All right. So we invest in people, and what that means is, because we're of the mindset that we're one big team, staffing teams is something that we share across our partner boundaries. Now, people are all unique. Partner teams are no exception to this, and we really put people into places where they're going to be successful. We've even had situations where we've had people who have been construed as poor performers or whatnot, and then after we found the right place for them within our partner teams, they've had a huge impact once we've made that change. Now we really value the career interests of the people on our partner teams as well. We look to people to put people in places and roles that will really engage them. So we like at SkyBox, we advocate for our team members when we're making all of these staffing decisions with our partners. Now, there are a number of great examples where we've actually been able to move SkyBox employees right into roles that are really their dream job on Halo.
And relationships matter. Yet they're frequently overlooked because it's really hard to identify what those clear, tangible benefits you are from all the relationship building. But it's key to building trust, which is a cultural touchstone of ours. Making games is hard, and there's going to be tough times with tough conversations that need to happen. But leaders with those healthy relationships will shepherd the team through those tough times. For example, we also, part of the relationship building we try to do is those frequent visits. So we're going to talk about process. Process is a really, really large area to cover. Most of our partnership areas are over engineering, so we're going to be talking about that. But we say we have the same process because it's important for us to, if we are saying that we are one big team and we are all in this together, we can't have different processes. We don't want to ever create a culture of the haves and have-nots or an us versus them mentality. But like I said, we will be focusing mainly on engineering process, and who better to talk about engineering process than the engineer?
It's my favorite topic. So the truth is we share all of our engineering processes across our organizations. For example, we work on the exact same branches in the same Perforce repository. We do code reviews together. We use the exact same code review tool. We review our technical design plans together. We share process wins and optimizations with each other. We contribute to the same shared documentation repository.
All right, culture of trust. This is such an important thing to us. This is the toughest one too, and it continues to be the toughest since it's such a fragile and fleeting thing. And, I don't want to say that trust was built overnight because it wasn't. We didn't just blindly walk in, blindly trusting one another. Honestly, this took a long time to build, but the most important thing that we did was that we both came in, assumed good intent, and strengthened our trust over the years. So, something that we strive for in both our offices is psychological safety. And that's being able to be your true self and voice your true opinions without fear of negative impact. But all that distance makes it really, really hard. So given the hurdles that we knew we would have to clear, we went in knowing that this was something that we would have to work at every single day and something that we would have to maintain every day.
And a huge part of trust is making it safe to fail. And what safety comes from is being able to communicate those failures quickly and being able to communicate those failures in both directions.
All right, so now you have our secret, our 3 key principles. Now let's just jump into the next section and talk about what this looks like when we put this into practice. All right, so the Halo 5 ship era. Obviously, these aren't the real dates. For these dates that we have up here, they're just going to be referring to the dates that SkyBox joined in on the fun. Okay, so the Halo 5 ship era is known as a series of start small lessons. Let's jump into our first start small lesson. Okay, so we're going to set the stage a bit. As I said before, we knew we'd need a lot of engineering support. We're about 1 year out, and then we were going up on Xbox One, and in walks these 10 engineers, David being one of them.
So the way we started out is, you can kind of have to think of it like this is the very start of a relationship. This is the most distance our studios have ever had from each other. So we started with a small team of people, and we worked on site at 343 for a full 2 weeks. Every developer had a workstation set up for them. They were sitting with the team members that they would be partnering with in the future. We went to lunch together. We had dinner together. We worked through problems together. Now, being on site for an extended period of time like this really helped jumpstart our relationship. We found a lot of relationships where their foundation came from that initial 2 weeks that we spent. So really our lesson from this era is really start small, build strong relationships. And now there are a lot of reasons why starting small is important, especially on the engineering side. When we're starting a new partnership relationship, we're looking to ramp up in a team on an entirely new code base, an entirely new development environment, on a different development process, a new team structure, basically the answers to the questions of, hey, who knows about this system? Now, in that first 2 weeks, many SkyBox engineers were able to take their first change through design, to testing, to code review, to check-in, basically through the entire development process. Now, our development environment was actually a particular challenge. When we started on this project, the development environment, like all of our tools and workflows essentially, had never been used outside of 343's network. They'd never been tested on a partner network like ours. Now, by spending 2 weeks on site, we had kind of like a baseline experience of how everything was supposed to work. So when we went back to SkyBox and tried to set this up for the very first time, we had a great understanding of like how the tools should work, and we could diagnose performance issues or actual functionality issues. So really, I would say a lesson from this era is really start small to learn your engineering styles, your workflows, and the entire tech stack associated with your project. And
All right, now on to the culture case study. And this point in time was so pivotal for us that I'm going to talk about the 2-week stint again. David was being very, very kind to us when he said it was challenging. We weren't perfect partners this first go-around. It wasn't a rosy, idyllic picture. And we hadn't learned how to be good partners to each other yet. So, we didn't have a lot of things documented. There was a lot of tribal knowledge. And we fell down a couple times within that first week. But that's okay. That was totally okay, because when you start small, it makes things safe to experiment, and it makes things safe to fail. You can fail without being a failure if you make yourself better from it and you learn from those mistakes. So we failed fast and we learned fast. And with that team of 10, we were able to do, in that short amount of time, we were able to get some small check-ins. Now, small check-ins, don't ever discount them, because every single one of those is an opportunity to build trust and have good experiences. And after a while, those series of small check-ins begin to build momentum. And so by the time those 10 had left, there was this great bank of trust, goodwill, and respect. And this did so much to get our relationship off to a really, really good start.
And I'd add that right from the start, we could, from a SkyBox perspective, we could feel that trust. We had full access to the code base. We had full access to talk to anyone at 343 that we needed to. 2 of us were working on gameplay code, the beating heart of the Halo experience. So really, our lesson from this area is really start small to build trust.
So let's go on to the post-ship era. All right, so we're shipping, we're doing DLC, and we're full steam ahead. Now, there was a lot of stuff that we released between games, and so we're just going to focus in on Halo 5 Forge PC and the 4K update.
So let's talk a little bit about Halo 5 Forge. Actually, let's take a back step. Let's just talk about Forge in general. So Forge in Halo is sort of like a feature that many of our players use to make some really world-class multiplayer content for our game. Now, the goal of Halo 5 Forge was to put a free PC-based editor with a fully revamped mouse and keyboard UI into the hands of our UGC community to really kind of almost embolden their creativity. Now, SkyBox had full ownership over this project. Now, this was a great opportunity for us to build on some of the personal relationships, processes, and trust that we'd established in our first era. It was a great opportunity for SkyBox to take on more ownership over bigger areas of Halo. Now, Halo 5 Forge was an ambitious project for a number of reasons. First off, we were building based off of the Halo 5 Xbox One code base, and we were taking regular integrations from that title as it was shipping and as it was releasing new DLC packages. Now, it was also the first time the Halo codebase had shipped on PC in a very, very, very long time. Finally, we were rebuilding the underlying rendering engine to leverage DirectX 12. And if you remember back then, DirectX 12 was pretty much as bleeding edge as you can get. And now remember this last point, because I'm going to come back to it. Now, Halo 5 4K, on the other hand, started development after Halo 5 Forge shipped. In contrast, this was a DLC release for Halo 5 that added support for the upcoming Xbox One X, and it had to be ready for Xbox One X launch and had to either maintain or improve the experience for all of the original Xbox One users. So now, while up until this point, most of our co-development relationship had been focused on, kind of more of a close-knit co-development work. But now, at this point in time, Halo 5 Forge and Halo 5 4K were more projects that were more standalone, where SkyBox owned the vast majority of development. Now, SkyBox owned the roadmap, we owned the task breakdown, we owned staffing, and all development efforts. Now, we structured the project this way for a number of reasons, because it was actually work that was much easier to separate from the rest of Halo 5, and work was able to take place in a separate branch. Now, in both projects, the way we started out, we started with kind of like a seed team from our team from the first era. And then we were able to add people externally through external hires or through staff that we moved from other areas within SkyBox. And this was actually a great way for us to grow in the project. By having so many people co-located and working on the same body of work, we were able to ramp up staff a lot more quickly than normal. And as well, we were able to really grow that sense of co-ownership over the code base amongst many of our already very experienced staff members. So I would say that areas of wholly owned work can be a great opportunity for growing an established co-development relationship.
So I want to talk a little bit more about this and its importance. It would have been really easy for us at 343 and SkyBox to say, our integrated model really worked well. Let's just keep doing it the same way. But it's important to not be strict around conforming to a template because, the original template just worked. Allow yourself to experiment with all these different structures because these different structures mean different experiences, and these different experiences mean more growth for staff in both sides. And you can use that to strengthen the relationship as well. And we really feel like this is what's allowed us to be more flexible and agile in our development. So
remember how I said I was going to come back to that DirectX 12 point? Well, now's the time. So let's bring it back to Halo 5 Forge. So just a refresher, SkyBox was responsible for rebuilding the entire Halo 5 Forge graphics engine in DirectX 12. Now, when we started that work, SkyBox's experience was limited to simulation, UI, and tools work. We had not ever touched the graphics code. Now, while we had a very, very skilled graphics team, they were new to the code base, and they were working with a brand new graphics API. And for example, many of the drivers that we were working with were still alpha. We didn't even have beta drivers. Now, can you see where I'm going with this? As you can imagine, the estimates for a lot of this work were overrun. At this point, though, we had two producers, one at 343 and one at SkyBox, who were really in charge of this whole project. They had daily calls with each other. They were updating on project status every single day. And through that time, they formed a really strong relationship with each other. Now, they started communicating and tracking our overruns immediately. By the time it became clear that we were going to be missing our milestone, we were fortunate in that a lot of the Halo 5 work had completed, so we were able to leverage some of the capacity of the 343 graphics team to finish off a number of our different subsystems. This partnership ended up paying off dividends down the road because we were able to then leverage that relationship when those two graphics teams, like the 343 side and the SkyBox side, ended up working together. As well, the 343 engineers were able to get some hands-on experience with DirectX 12 right in the get-go. Now, this wouldn't have happened, or it would have happened a lot more slowly if we didn't have this strong partnership with each other. So really our case study lessons are make it safe to fail and communicate that failure in partner relationships and make sure that trust works both ways, and that trust comes from strong personal relationships. So while Halo 5 Forge and Halo 4K were more examples of work that SkyBox wholly owned, we were still in general trending more towards a very close-knit co-development style of work. And at this point in time, we really started changing our hiring process so that it was more aligned to that work. Now, what we really started doing is looking for stronger than average communication skills in our candidates. And now I'm not talking about like extroverts versus introverts here. I'm talking about people who have a good sense of when and what to communicate. Like in an interview, for example, a good test of this is like a candidate who can understand why you're asking a question rather than just like answering, or rather than just trying to answer, you also can then anticipate what you're going to ask next. Now, we pay a lot more attention to this now. People who can anticipate the information that others are going to need and kind of put themselves in the perspective of someone else really excel in co-development relationships where communication by its very nature is going to be higher latency. Now, we also tend to hire more intermediate and senior candidates. We do still hire junior candidates, but we want to make sure that we can put them into roles where we can really support their growth properly. We also really value people who have direct experience in distributed development environments. like, for example, who have already worked in a co-development relationship or who have worked in fully distributed remote dev studios. Now, that's not to say that we don't value the hard skills. We really do. It's just more that we really evaluate soft skills a lot more heavily in our interviews than before. And we make sure that great communicators are part of every single one of the teams that we build at SkyBox. We look to our great communicators to form these strong relationships and further foster like this culture of trust. So really our lesson is hire great communicators and structure your teams around them.
All right, let's move on to our current game. So here we are. The next Halo is in the making, and of course, we're going to make it even more epic than it was before. So for those of you who watch E3, in 2018, we announced that we are building the Slipspace engine and building Halo Infinite on top of that. And then at this E3, I don't know if you saw, we're going to be on PC now, so that means in addition to being on the Xbox One family and the new console, we have a wide range of PCs to support. So, you know what that means? Even more engineering help was needed.
So yeah, let's kind of talk about where we are at this point in time. The teams are growing really, really quickly. We have a more complex kind of relationship than we ever had before. So for example, around this time, SkyBox was actually partnering with a total of 18 different teams across some very diverse areas of the project. And it was actually becoming a real challenge to manage. And I would say the biggest problem is what I like to envision as the surface area of our partnership. And this is an abstraction for all of the different ways that we communicate with each other. Now, with the relationship between 343 and SkyBox, communication between our organization happens with every single person on the project. Now, for example, our producers on each team at SkyBox are talking with their respective producers at 343. Engineers at both 343 and SkyBox are reviewing tech specs and plans and code reviews together. Engineers and producers are communicating progress on blocking issues and task updates. Now, designers and engineers are iterating on features together. Now, this is a massive surface area to keep on top of. And, perhaps needless to say, the technical breadth of the number of teams and the areas that they're working on is daunting as well. We also found that while we had great communication at sort of our leadership level and at our individual teams level, that we were maybe missing some opportunities for communication between those levels. So it was really time to add a layer of engineering leadership at SkyBox. So now, this is what we moved to. We basically just added an engineering group lead that would be responsible for an entire area of work. Now, this is a pretty normal adaptation to a growing team. What's a little bit different is that around this time, 343 was making some similar changes, so we actually chose to mirror their structure. Now, what does this look like? Basically, our teams are now broken into 4 different groups. Each of these groups has one engineering lead at SkyBox and one engineering lead at 343 who track all of the work for their respective areas. Now, by mirroring 343's structure, each lead had a designated person at SkyBox to reach out to and vice versa. Now, this allowed us to improve both our surface area of communication problem and just general communication at the same time.
So what are the lessons that we take from this? Mirroring management support structure keeps things simple and it builds ties. Some of the benefits we've seen are, we've seen a lot of strong relationships form between the engineers we've paired. We've seen more frequent communication and faster response to issues on both sides. Quicker feedback on performance would get communicated, and we'd see the results of that feedback much faster as well. And it really put us in a better place to scale the team up. So, even though we were growing the team to support development, we were still able to keep that culture of trust because we had these engineering managers in place who would really be the people who would be the example and who would show the rest of the team, this is how we do business.
So now every change that we make to our game goes through code review. Now we use a common tool, and almost all of our code reviews have 343 and SkyBox reviewers. Now, giving and receiving critical feedback on code can be tough, even between people who know each other really well. Code style and thought processes are generally highly individual. Now, as you can imagine, critical feedback is a lot harder to give and receive when you don't know the person on the other end, and it's given purely through more textual comments. Now, To address this issue, we try to move as much of this conversation outside of our code review process as possible. So, for example, we have technical design plans for large features. These TDPs get reviewed by both SkyBox and 343 stakeholders. We get people together to whiteboard out or virtually whiteboard out smaller features or bugs. And when we're making architectural changes, we really try to get people face-to-face. So really, I think a lesson to keep in mind here is we want to avoid finding as many of these design and architectural issues in code review whenever possible.
And before I move on to the culture case study, I'd like to talk a bit more about this one as well, because at its core, this lesson ties deeply into our culture of trust and psychological safety. Because in practice, what this actually looks like is feeling psychologically safe enough to show work in progress. And no one likes showing work in progress. And I really got to give it to our tools architect for pushing this. But we want to be able to be comfortable with building psychological safety around that. And even though, I think David talked about our technical design plans, when those are getting made, you don't just end up with a giant report in front of you where you have to thumb through a major change that wants to go through. No, those are done collaboratively with eyes on it all along the way. Now, since I talked about culture, I'll keep talking about culture. So we're very open with the actual product. Every single detail of the game is completely open to SkyBox. They are not locked out of anything. But there's so much more to development than just making the actual product. There's a lot of life that gets lived on those days that we make the game. Lots of meetings, lots of events, and lots of information that comes from those meetings and events. So we decided to film all of our major meetings, all of our all hands and our AMAs for them to watch. And those AMAs are exactly what you think they are. They are the Reddit-style Ask Me Anything. And what happens is our entire team gets up, piles into a room, our directors line up like they're in a firing squad, and we just pepper them with questions. And our developers never shy away from asking controversial questions, and our developers never shy away, and neither do our directors, from answering truthfully. So you can imagine things can get pretty real in there. A lot of information also gets rolled out at these, so you can imagine how it gets talked about afterwards. So when we make these videos, there's a little bit of a delay, but by the time we get the videos over, the SkyBox employees have already found out about this information from a side channel from their 343 friends. So you can imagine that's not great to find out that way. So that's when we learned that it wasn't just enough to make things open. We had to make it easily accessible too. We needed to make each other a part of one another's daily life. So what did we end up doing? We ended up live streaming all of those meetings. In addition to that, we not only live stream, we have the ability for SkyBox employees to type in questions to our directors in real time, and someone will ask them for them, and so they get to really participate, and that's just one example of what we do. Another fun example is that we have Day of Play every month. We shut the studio down and we play the game because that is really, really important for us to do, to understand and know the game that we're making. And SkyBox is no different, and they play along with us. They can smack talk with us. They can shoot us, and it's really fantastic to have that participation. I think even next Day of Play, you guys are going to bust down a bunch of people to play alongside with us in our play lab, and so that's a really nice and special thing.
We're going to try to avoid calling it the Skybus, but
Skybus.
try.
So here's our lesson. Full, accessible transparency in all aspects of the project and team is vital for building trust. All right, so we just covered a ton of information, and now we're going to wrap it up for you. So here's our mindset, our philosophy. We're the same team across different buildings. We invest in our people. We share our process. And we build a culture of trust. So, here is our summary slide. If you take anything away from this, it should be that. And this isn't to say that you don't need a really great schedule, the sufficient hard skills or a vision. You need all of that too. This is what makes it special. And now, I think we have time for questions.